أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام را كتاب أنزلناه إليك لتخرج الناس من الظلمات إلى النور بإذن ربهم إلى صراط العزيز الحميد صلوات محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I like to begin, as I have been doing so every night with the dua which is recommended for that particular night. The dua for the 10th day of the month of Ramadan is as follows. اللهم اجعلني فيه من المتوكلين عليك واجعلني فيه من الفائزين لديك واجعلني فيه من المقربين إليك بإحسانك يا غاية الطالبين. Translation says, O Allah, on this day please include me with those who rely upon you, and include me on this day with those who win with you, and include me on this day with those drawn near to you out of your beneficence, O the ultimate goal of the seekers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this dua and all of the other du'as that mu'mineen have made. The verse that I recited for you tonight is from Surah Ibrahim, the initial ayat, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins with this huruf, or these huruf known as huruf muqatta'at, the abbreviated alphabets. That these alphabets are something which, of course, we do not have the proper knowledge of. We do not know what they stand for. And it is enough that a person for the past 14 centuries who has gone through this book of Quran, translated and as well as done the tafsir and the ta'wil, whatever they could have as far as this book is concerned, written many volumes, 20, 30, 40 volumes of tafsir. Each individual has written close to a thousand of volumes of tafsir that have been done, and all the other research that individuals have done as far as this Quran is concerned. Those who were focused more on the scientific aspect, they went ahead and did the research in Quran from the scientific aspect. Those who were focused on more the law and things that had to do with the law aspect of Quran, they went ahead and they did research on that aspect of Quran. Those who were interested in the recitation aspect of Quran, they went ahead and did their research, thorough research in that aspect of Quran. And likewise, those who were just interested in the Arabic literature of Quran, they went ahead and wrote books, containing and, discussing that aspect of Quran. Similarly, there are many such titles or such topics that have been categories of topics that have been discussed as far as Quran is concerned. Therefore, we find that with all of the work and the research that has been done for all of these many years, still nobody can with certainty say that these huruf muqatta'at, these alphabets that are in the beginning of 29 chapters of the Holy Quran, with authority nobody can say what it means. Yes, some people may guess based on certain riwayat that they have received or they may have read in reference to what Ma'sumin have hinted toward these, but even Ma'sumin kept this thing to be secret and did not reveal it to their followers, and hence it is something which is unknown to all of us. So with all the work that we have been able to do as far as this Quran is concerned, still insan is humbled by the fact that he is unable to decipher what these alphabets really mean. With that said, I began with this ayat because tonight the topic of discussion is Quran is nur. Quran is light. Quran is illumination for us. This Nur-e Hidayat, which is there for our guidance. And therefore, there are many such ayat in Quran that discuss this concept, discuss this topic of how Quran is Nur from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at this ayat that I recited for you from Surah Ibrahim. It says, Alif Lam Ra. Book has been revealed to you, Muhammad, so that by the permission of their Lord, you would be able to lead people from darkness into light, along the path of the majestic praised one. Min al-zulumati ila nur course, the translation of the word nur in this has been done as light. That so that Prophet would be able to lead people out of darkness toward light. That's how they translated the word min az-zulumati ila nur. So with that said, we see that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights the purpose and the hadaf and the objective behind the revelation of Quran. What does it say? What does it state? The objective is to be able to bring people out of darkness. So now, for example, we say, well, we believe in Quran. We believe that this is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe that Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he is the one who delivered this Quran to us. And therefore, we are already on the path of Nur. So we don't really need it to take us out of Zulumat, for example. No, this Quran is continuous guidance for you. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this book to be, forever. It's not going to have any expiry date. It's not going to expire, nor the contents that are mentioned in this book. You take a look at any book that has been written in the past 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. Some books do make it that far, right? Some books do exist for that long a period of time. But after a while, after 100 years, 200 years, a lot of people really don't remember. Can you go ahead and name any books that were written in the 10th century? We're in the 20th century. Go ahead and name a few books that were written back in the 10th century. I don't think many people would know if there exist any books that were written back in the 10th century. So even if there are books that are existing for the past 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, of course, we can go ahead and name many books. As far as our mufassirin and muhaddiseen are concerned, a lot of these books that we have in fiqh and other work that have been preserved, they exist, and these books are primarily, the reason that these books are existing is because their association with Quran, their association with word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they did not have any association with the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it would have been very difficult for these books to exist. Now, one thing is to exist. Second thing is to be popular amongst the people so that people still care for the book. That is another story. So we find how when a person goes ahead and associates himself with this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how this book is forever, that person also becomes forever. Now I'll name a few names and you'll know these people. When you hear the name Allama Tabatabai, right away you remember Tafsir al-Quran, right? Right away. Because of the work that he had done. This is our ma'asir, our contemporary, so you remember him. Similarly, in the circle of experts who are students of this field, you go ahead and name, individuals such as Tabarsi. They'll right away remember the tafsir that he has produced. Other individuals who have worked not in Quran, but for example in Hadith. You go ahead and name someone such as, Allama Majlisi. Right away, people will remember that, he's associated with a book called Biharul Anwar and many other books that he produced, but mainly Biharul Anwar, and so people remember him. Because there are hadiths that are of Ma'sumin alayhim salatu wassalam. You go ahead and name Allama Hilli. Right away, people will remember for the fiqhi aspect of Allama, the work that he produced, for example. So we see that these individuals, and then there were some nabigha, there were some geniuses who, when you name them, you find that, they are well versed in all areas and they're expert in every field. So for example, someone was to name Mullah Fayyid Kashani, right away you'll say, well, Fayyid Kashani, someone who's known for his tafsir, someone who's known for his fiqh, someone who's known for his akhlaq, someone who's known for his hadith. So he's basically touched upon all Islamic sciences. But this is the point, that as soon as someone associates themselves with Quran or with this hadith, right away their dhikr remains. So with this ayat that I recited for you, there are a few points that I want to highlight tonight before going into the depths and details, and inshallah we'll continue the discussion on Quran and the tafsir of Quran in the nights to come. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Alif Lam Ra. Again, the words which you and I don't know the meaning of. We don't know what this Alif, what this Lam, what this Ra means. It's just that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed these words. And I may have mentioned the reason behind it. when this book was revealed unto the Prophet, it is a book of miracle. This was the miracle of the Holy Prophet. Now, although he produced many other miracles, when people asked him, the kuffar, they would ask him for certain miracles, Prophet would produce them. But those weren't really main miracles of the Holy Prophet. The main miracle of the Holy Prophet was this book, Quran, the eloquence of this book, Quran. And of course, because you've always heard, back in that day in Arabia, people really took pride in their prose and in their poetry. And therefore, still a lot of shu'ara from that time period are famous, and their works still exist. Now, with that said, we find that how is it that this book is going to challenge the people and compete with those Arabs at that time? So this book had to be extraordinary. Well, the fact that it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's nothing more that it cannot add more to the extraordinary nature of this book. But still, in order for the Prophet to attract people, back in the day, Prophet would recite these ayat. If they were very simple, basit, not eloquent, then people wouldn't really pay attention to it. That too, the kuffar we're talking about. Muslimin, they would have paid attention. So with these words that are placed in the beginning, they are there to grab the attention of the listener. Prophet would say, Alif Lam Mim, right away it will grab the attention of the crowd. And they'll be like, what is he that is about to say? We've never heard of this word, you know. And right away then, after he says Alif Lam Mim, then he will say, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. If you look in Quran, almost all the places, except few exceptions, whenever you have huruf muqatta'at or these abbreviated alphabets, right after that, there's a discussion on Quran. Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ in Surah Baqarah. Alif Ram Ra, تِلْكَ آيَاتُ الْكِتَابِ in Surah Yusuf. Here in Surah Ibrahim, Alif Lam Ra, Kitabun Anzalnahu. And similarly, other places that begin with huruf muqatta, Yasin wal Quran al Hakim, and other places, except one or two exceptions, as I mentioned before. We find that right after these huruf muqatta'at, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Quran. Right away, the discussion begins on Quran. And similar is the case over here. One quick note on this is that Allah mentions in this ayat Zulumat and Nur, two opposites of one another. Darkness, and Nur is translated as light. So when you look at Nur and you look at darkness, you know, scientifically speaking, this world, this universe, this that we live in, there's darkness in it. 97% is darkness. Quran points towards this phenomena as well. In Surah Yasin, it says, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ اللَّيْلُ نَسْلَخُ مِنْهُ النَّهَارَ فَإِذَا هُمْ مُظْلِمُونَ. And a sign for them is the night, which we strip of daylight, and behold, they find themselves in the dark. So, you know, 97% there is darkness. And then, you know, Nur comes in temporarily to those places. So we find that, so if something is being stripped out of another, night is original and daylight becomes what? Something which is stripped out. So that's secondary, right? The original, the primary would be the darkness that is there. So two things are created to remove darkness. The next two verses in Surah Yasin point out that as well. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. Ayat number 38. And the sun runs on its place of rest. That is the ordaining of Almighty, All-Knowing. And right after that, وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلَ حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْأُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ. And as for the moon, we have ordained its phases until it becomes like an old palm leaf. So, you know, we all are looking for that old palm leaf, or in the beginning, we're looking for that crescent, which is very difficult to see from the naked eye. Sometimes it is not that difficult, and we're able to determine that first day of the month of Shawwal. And inshallah, this year will be the same. It seems very obvious that when the first day of Shawwal will be. I don't want to give out the news too early, but it is pretty straightforward this year, and it seems like there will not be any dispute as far as the first day of Shawwal or Eid al-Fitr is concerned. But how we get to celebrate this Eid is another story. Is it going to be just like how we're, commemorating or going through this month of Ramadan? Is it going to be like this, or will, inshallah, things get better? And if they do get better, will we be able to take part in the Eid celebrations? Inshallah, we'll see how that goes. But nonetheless, whatever is best for us. So we find that these two ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how they serve as, that which brings the darkness, strips the light out of this darkness. And so are these two on their own, or is there someone who runs them or who commands them? The next ayat right away answers that question. How many times have you recited Surah Yasin? I think many people already have it memorized. If not memorized, but semi-memorized. For example, semi-memorized, I mean that someone is reciting it and you can recite along with it without looking at the text. That's how many of us have it memorized. Because, it's been recited so much. That's the beauty of something that you recite over and over. You hear it over and over again. And it just makes its way inside your brain, inside your mind, and you don't lose it. And that's the attraction that Quran also has. So, for example, the example of how Allah mentions these Shams and Qamar, the sun and the moon, right after the ayah number 38, 39, ayah number 40 expresses that, doubt if someone ever had it. La shamsu yanbaghi laha an tudrika al-qamara wala al-laylu sabiqu an-nahar wa kullun fi falakin yasbahun. Neither it behooves the sun to overtake the moon, nor may the night outrun the day, and each swims in its own orbit. They're all in their own orbit and they're functioning, and you will never see any malfunction in the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. You see a lot of malfunctions, in man-made creations. Technology is the culprit to a lot of these malfunctions. Things go bad, and you're stuck with it. And the best way to fix the technology is to just restart, right? That's what I have heard from the beginning. But we see that this nizam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, which has existed for millions of years, yet there isn't any malfunctioning in it. It's running on its course, the way it should be running on its course. Sun does not take lead on the moon, moon does not go over on the day and the night. They're all running and swimming, as the ayat says, in their own orbit. So the sun and moon are not on their own. They don't ever, overtake one another. ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. That is the ordaining. This is the taqdeer that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, that they will never be able to overrun the other. So therefore, brothers and sisters, the way there is darkness initially in the universe, and this was just a physical aspect of this ayah that I was discussing. Of course, this has to be a prelude to something more spiritual. That initially in the universe, there's this darkness, and the two are created to remove it. See, the two things that are mentioned. Although universe is humongous, every planet has its own moon, and all that discussion aside, we're talking about our own planet, for example. Because, to be honest, there isn't really any, possibility of living on other planets. Humans have been searching for many, many years. Hopefully they find one day. But, this world is where the humans are. So that's what our markaz is. So that's why the example is of this markaz. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the example of the galaxy at large. The Surah Buruj talks about this, Surah Tariq talks about this. Those ayat or those, surahs talk in depth about it. Many people still haven't been able to figure out. We're still struggling to figure out what it means. Maybe in the next 50 years, with more advancement of science and technology, maybe those ayat will make sense to us. Right at the moment, we just translate and we just go by. Similar to how, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I've given this example over and over, that it was difficult for the Mufassirin to give example of TV and recorders, right? because they just did not exist 200 years ago, 300 years ago. When Mullah Faiz Kashani was writing Tafsir Safi, say, 300 some 400 years ago, he had no idea what TV, VCR, or well, right now, children this day and age may not know what VCRs are, but at least DVDs and, Blu-ray and camcorders and, digital camera and all these things, these Mufassirin, they had no idea. So when they stumbled over these ayat of Quran, it says, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ, that Allah will show them what they used to do. They translated it, but I don't think they completely understood how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to show it. Because there was no concept of the digital recording or the playbacks, right? Surveillance for that matter. There was no record. There was no precedent for that. So when there isn't any precedent for that, then it's very difficult for you to comprehend. Similarly, many such ayat in Surah Buruj and Surah Tariq and other surahs, shorter chapters in the 30 Juz, there just really isn't any scientific explanation to that. And that's why initially when people run into these ayat, they take it for granted. So, that's saying something. But then when things become obvious and discoveries are made, then they go ahead and put these ayat together and say, well, yeah, this makes sense. So Quran is a book for up until the day of judgment. So it's not a book, for a certain time it was revealed for the people that lived 14 centuries ago in Arabia. That's the beauty of this book, that Javedan aspect of this book, which is always going to be there. So with that said, maybe in the next 50 years, 60 years, 100 years, we'll realize some of these ayat truly mean. At the moment, we don't know. But our focus is this universe. When I say this universe, our focus is our own planet, where we have the sun, where we have our own moon. And we're not concerned with the moon of other planets. We're concerned with the moon. So that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also referring to, because that's where our reach is at the moment. And we've been able to discover them. Man has been able to land on this moon. So our discussion will be only up to this. So when it says that these two are created to remove the darkness, sun and the moon, I recited ayah number 38 and 39 of Surah Yasin. There's darkness in the hearts of human beings as well. Mankind is created illiterate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points out this. I recited this ayah last night as well in Surah Nahl 78. أَخْرَجَكُم مِّن بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought you forth from the bellies of your mother wombs of your mothers, yet you did not know anything. You were absolutely illiterate. We jokingly say that some people are born, as knowledgeable, but it's just a slang that is used. No, everyone is born without knowledge and illiterate for that matter. And that's where, kids, they start growing up, they start learning, from the alphabets, they make words, then they start getting into more complex things, the speech and whatnot, and that's how you learn. That's how you remove that illiterate aspect of human beings, by giving them literacy, by giving them light, by providing that nur to them, so that it takes them out of this darkness, because jahalat is compared with darkness. Age of darkness, right? Zamana Jahiliya is referred to as also age of darkness, because before the advent of Islam and this book, it was not revealed. It was Zamana Jahiliya. It was darkness all around. So with that said, to remove this darkness for human beings, Allah sent two anwar. Two nur have been sent down. Two lights have been sent down. What are these two lights? The same way to remove the darkness from the universe, there's this sun and there's this moon. God also created two lights for us as well. One is, of course, in the form of this Quran, which we are discussing. Second is in the form of the one who's reciting this Quran. That is the Zat of the Holy Prophet, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Surah Yunus points out by saying, هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ الشَّمْسَ ضِيَاءً وَالْقَمَرَ نُورًا. That it is God who has made the sun radiant and the moon luminous. our hearts are also in darkness. This darkness cannot be removed with the sun and the moon. So that darkness which exists in our planet is removed by the sun and with this moon at night time. But that darkness cannot remove the darkness. That light cannot remove the darkness in our hearts. So there's a separate set of anwar that are needed. So Allah talked about two nur for this world or this universe, for our planet. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about two for each and every single human being, in order to bring the light, to remove the darkness from us, from our hearts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also sent down two lights, one in the form of Quran and second in the form of the Holy Prophet. As far as Holy Prophet is concerned, Surah Ma'idah points out in ayah number 15, قَدْ جَاءَكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ نُورٌ وَكِتَابٌ مُبِينٌ, that indeed a light and a clarifying book has come to you from your Lord. So, well, if they both were the same, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not separate them in this way. So one is light and the other one is Rasul. One is Nur and the second one is mentioned as Kitab. So Kitab we understand is Quran. What is this Nur? Mufassirin mentioned this Nur is referring to the Holy Prophet. And as far as Quran is concerned, there are places where Quran is called Nur as well. And Quran is called many things, right? One of the names of Quran in this book is Nur. For example, in Surah Araf 157, we read, وَاتَّبَعُوا النُّورَ الَّذِي وَاتَّبَعُوا النُّورَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ مَعَهُ. Now follow the light which is sent down to him. Sent down to who? To the Holy Prophet. What is this light? Now this light is referring to Quran. So the previous ayah, Ma'idah 15, talked about Rasulullah being that light. And in this ayat, Quran is referred to as the light. So Quran is not only Nur, but it also is an intercessor. It is our Shifa'at Qunande, Shafe wa Mushafe, as intercession will be available on the day of judgment, but won't be beneficial to us, due to this reason. The Quran points out. It says what? It says, فَمَا تَنْفَعُهُمُ الشَّفَاعَةُ الشَّافِعِينَ, that the intercession of the intercessors will be no benefit to certain individuals. It's in Surah Muddassir, ayat number 48. Why it will not be beneficial? Well, there are reasons why this shafa'at will not be beneficial to you. And I'll get to those reasons shortly. Surah Muddassir is talking about it. So the previous ayat of Surah Muddassir referred to as يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. The criminals will be questioned on that day of judgment. مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرٍ. What led you to Jahannam? And then they'll explain the reasons behind why they were led into Jahannam. So it says, فَمَا تَنْفَعُهُمْ شَفَاعَةُ الشَّافِعِينَ. The intercession of the intercessors will be of no benefit to them. Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam al-Muttaqeen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, he also refers to Quran as Shafi'un Mushaffa', that it is a book which is definitely going to intercede on our behalf. But of course, Prophet made this claim. Now connect this ayat with the ayat of Surah Muddassir, which says, it will not benefit Prophet when he says, Ya Rabbi inna qawmi ittakhadhu hadhal Qur'ana mahjura, that, oh my Lord, my people abandoned this book. So those who have abandoned the book, this book will not benefit them. Simple as that. You've abandoned someone. Even in this day and age, in this life, if there is a family member that you've abandoned many years ago, on purpose or by mistake, whatever the case may be, and when you run into them again, you want them to accept you again, sometimes they do, sometimes it's very difficult. So, well, you were never there in my life. All these years, there was this void, and I don't think it could be filled again. So therefore, we find that it's very difficult to accept. So here at least, the Quran which you were not with, during your lifetime you did not utilize this Quran. You did not use this Quran. You did not take nur from this Quran. Now all of a sudden in Jannat or in Qayamat you want to ask this Quran, can you go ahead and benefit me? You gotta make sure that you develop unsiyat with this book in order for you to tomorrow have some acquaintance with it. If you don't know, you will not be able to make this friendship with it. Yes, if you knew someone over the years, this friendship develops. And then maybe if there's a gap in between and they meet again, at least you have recollection of someone. The Quran, you've never opened it up. You've never read the passages. You've never understood it. Now all of a sudden on the Day of Judgment, while Quran is doing shafaat for many, we'll be saying, oh Quran, do my shafaat as well. This Quran, because we're not used to it, we're not accustomed to it, it's very difficult to fathom that we'll do our shafaat. So not acting on Quran is a sign of mahjuriyat. So what does that mean that people abandon Quran? Does that mean they didn't read it? No. Many people read it. It's not. So there are different levels of mahjuriyat then. First level of mahjuriyat and the abandonment is someone never opened a book Quran, which I doubt would be the case with any Muslim. That I'm sure that once in their lifetime they've opened up this book. Or at least they know a few chapters of this book, because to be honest, you have to know a couple of chapters that are required for namaz. You need to know Surah Fatiha. And you need to know at least one more chapter in order for you to perform your salat, daily salat. So that's why I say it's highly doubtful that anyone who's a Muslim does not know these two chapters from Quran. They don't. So they have read Quran. But so that's the first level of it, where the mahjuriyat is that no one has ever opened this Quran. First group has never opened this book. Second would be those who have opened this book, but they have used it, very, very rarely, only on certain occasions. That's all. And then there are those who have regularly used it for recitation, but they've never tried to understand it. And then the fourth would be those who've understood it, but they did not act upon it. Right? So severity changes, but they're all pretty much are abandoning the book. You know about it, but you don't act. Same as that. Someone who doesn't know about it and doesn't act. Oh, it's not same in the severity of it. Your punishment will be more because you know and you don't act, as opposed to someone who doesn't know and doesn't act. But it's one of the mistaq of abandonment of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So not acting is a sign of mahjuriyat. Not reading could be a sign of mahjuriyat, for example. Taking the ayat out of context could also be referred to as abandonment of the book. For example, this takfiri group, you name it, they changed names all these years. It's the same ideology, but they change names. They'll be called the extremists, whether it be the Wahhabi, the Taliban, the ISIS, Al-Qaeda, you name it, ISIL. There are other groups of these that exist in Africa as well. They have their own names. Shabab this and Shabab that. All of these extremist groups, they use the ayat of Quran to their own benefit, and they go ahead and utilize these ayat, and they misuse these ayat, and that's why they have given a very negative picture and painted a very negative picture of Islam. They call Shias kafir, and while the Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, idha darabtum fi sabilillahi fatabayyanu, wa la taqulu liman alqa ilaykum as-salam, lasta mu'minan, tabtaguna aradha al-hayat ad-dunya. In fact, forget about these extremists. Just read an article, a newspaper in India, probably from Hyderabad. A clipping was sent that, their scholar was talking about, a Sunni scholar was talking about the ahkam of zakat. And he said zakat should be given to this, according to the ayat of Quran, zakat, the recipient of zakat are this. And then it says zakat should not be given to non-Muslims, and zakat should not be given to the Qadianis, the Mahdavis, and should not be given to the Shia, because they're all out of the realm of Islam. Today, I mean, this day and age, probably in the last few days, this article was published. Just imagine. So there are people who have recited these ayat of zakat. They have mastered these ayat of zakat, calculating that how much nisab there would be, yet they're unaware of this ayat of Surah Nisa, ayat number 94, which says what? Believers, if you march with arms for the cause of God, make sure that you know whom to fight. Especially, this is to these extremist groups. You just heard a couple of nights ago, again, an attack in Iraq on Hashd al-Shabi, killing some, it was attack from Al-Qaeda or ISIS, that they attacked Hashd al-Shabi and they killed some of them. So you see the resurgence. It's going back. God knows how long this will last. We were enjoying the fact that, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this waba of ISIS was removed from Iraq, and Iraq was finally free of them, but you see this resurgence now. So we read in this ayat Nisa 94, maybe if there are people of some, I'm sure they've been brainwashed, but if there is a possibility, this ayat is very clear. Believers, if you march with arms for the cause of God, make sure you know whom to fight. Don't start your mahaz against someone. Do not accuse anyone who claims himself to be Muslim of disbelief just for the worldly gains. لا تقولوا لمن ألقى إليكم السلام. The one who says salamun alaykum to you, don't doubt that this person is saying salamun alaykum to you for saving his life. Even to that extent. Lasta mu'min. Don't call them that you're not a mu'min. تبتغون عرض الحياة الدنيا. Why? All you want is to gain this worldly benefit. For the worldly benefit, is that why you're going to go ahead and kill these people? And this article that I just quoted. Of course, rebuttal has been written to this article as well, which was published in a newspaper in Hyderabad. But we find that still people have this mentality, and this is not something which is new. So every Shia says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. At least this much, we're all same when it comes to. We also believe in Shahadatain, the two Shahadat, right? Shahadat of Allah being one, and Shahadat of the Holy Prophet. So the word in Arabic, Shahadatain, is the dual. Shahadat is a singular. Shahadatain means two Shahadat. It's a dual, right? It's not the plural, which would mean two or more, or three or more for that matter. So when we say Shahadatain, means Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Yes, you add the third Shahada, Shahadat al-Thalitha, which is Ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah wa wasiyu Rasulullah wa khalifatuhu bila fasl. That to confirm your Iman. But to become a Muslim, the first two are required. That's why they call Shahadatain. The word tain means two Shahadat. Now, with that said, then why is it that they're calling, these takfiris are calling Shias kafir? Muslims are the first one to do injustice to Quran. And this is where this abandonment of this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes. Some by misinterpreting these verses, so they use this verse for their own advantage. Some by absolutely, like you and I, abandoning this book, only using it rarely on one or two occasions whenever we are mostly in need. And throughout our lives, throughout the year, maybe we use it during the month of Ramadan, but after the month of Ramadan is over, هذا فراق بيني وبينك. We'll put this book away in a nice ghilaf, and we'll see you next Ramadan, inshallah. Or for example, if someone passes away, asks you to recite a subara, a juz, you go ahead and open this Quran. So that's that second category, unfortunately, you and I belong in that by abandoning. Some focusing on the verses of qital and mutashabihat. Yes, there are certain verses which are mutashabih, resemble other verses. I've spoken about this in Majalis a few years ago when we were commemorating the Shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqin Ali ibn Abi Talib, and there's a whole discussion on ayat mutashabih. So I won't go in the details. In order to remove the darkness, I'll recap so that we can, inshallah, resume our conversation tomorrow from where I leave off. That in order to remove the darkness of heart, you need two nurs, Quran and the Prophet. But if a nation doesn't pick up the Quran all year long, nor discuss the Prophet outside of his wiladat and his wafat, how will they come out of this darkness? If you only use Quran in month of Ramadan, that too just to the extent of reading and not understanding, and then we only commemorate the wafat and the wiladat of the Prophet, and aside from that we have no knowledge of the Holy Prophet. We focus a great deal on the enemies. We don't focus as much on their own zat and own sifat. Of course, nobody should think that I'm leaving the conversation here. Inshallah, we'll resume this conversation. Allah said two anwar, Quran and the Prophet, are referred to in Quran as nur. But when Prophet was leaving this world, of course, Quran is going to reign. Now someone has to be replaced with the Prophet, right? Someone has to take the place of the Prophet. And therefore the Holy Prophet very eloquently left that tradition, which inshallah I'll speak about tomorrow night, in which he said, Inni tarikum fikum muttaqalain, kitab Allahi wa itrati ahl bayti. That I leave behind you two weighty things. One is the book of Allah, which is already a nur. Quran already established that fact when it talked about me and Quran. But now that I'm no longer going to be with you, Quran will remain. But the Quran is subject to interpretation. So who do you take this interpretation from? The second thiql, aside from Quran, is my Ahl Bayt. And they will not separate from one another حَتَّى يَرِدَ عَلَيَّ الْحَوْض, until they return to me on the Day of Judgment at the Hawd. Inshallah, we'll stop over here because the next focus on the discussion could take a while for me to cover up. So I'll stop over here, I'll pause over here, and inshallah we'll resume our conversations tomorrow night. Hopefully you're able to take part in this online program on daily basis. If you have any feedbacks, if you have any questions, criticism, please do send us an email, let us know. I will, inshallah, I had in mind to organize a question and answer session live, and inshallah we'll use this opportunity hopefully next weekend, although every day seems like a weekend in this pandemic that we're going through. But nonetheless, inshallah, next weekend we'll shoot for maybe 1 or 2 nights after the speech. We will inshallah have a Q&A where some of the volunteers can pass along the questions that our live listeners have, and inshallah we will try and address those questions of yours. But aside from that day when we have this live session, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please do let us know so that we can make improvement if there need to be improvement. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Let's ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to ponder in this book and contemplate in this book of Quran. Month of Ramadan is the spring of those who are the students of Quran, so make sure that we take this opportunity, and then it continues even outside of the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq that after the recitation we understand and we also apply the teachings of Quran into our lives. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the strength to follow the commands and the teachings that are mentioned in this Quran. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of Waris Quran and make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam of our time. Let's conclude with the recitation of this dua that I'll share with you on the screen. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم ادخل على أهل القبور السرور. اللهم اغن كل فقير. اللهم اشف كل جائع. اللهم اكس كل عريان. اللهم اقض دين كل مدين. اللهم فرج عن كل مكروب. اللهم رد كل غريب. اللهم فك كل أسير. اللهم أصلح كل فاسد من أمور المسلمين. اللهم اشف كل مريض. اللهم سد فقرنا بغناك. اللهم غيث حالنا بحسن حالك. اللهم اغض عنا الدين واغننا من الفقر إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. متوجه زيارة. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا خيرة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك وعلى جدك وأبيك وعلى أمك وأخيك ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا قريب القرباء. السلام عليكم معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلام عليكم الشمس الشموس وعنيس النفوس أيها المدفون بأرض توسل ابن موسى الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم صاحب الأسر والزمان. السلام عليكم إمام الإنس والجان. السلام عليكم شريك القرآن. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أعوانك وأنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. with the group recitation of Quran, followed by the brief tafsir, and inshallah the nightly program at 9 o'clock. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.